Not exactly a misdemeanor. A Marvel fanfiction written by 29Flower29 on AO3. This was definitely not part of the plan. Not that Peter had really made a plan before tailing the two shady-looking guys to the abandoned warehouse, but that was really just besides the point. He really didn't have time to change into the suit before following them, but it hadn't really mattered. He was a scrawny-looking kid without the suit, and the henchman hadn't spared him a second glance on the subway. He was able to follow them for a few blocks away after that, thanks to his enhanced senses, so he really didn't need to change into the suit until they reached the warehouse itself. Peter slipped into a nearby alleyway, close enough that he could still hear them talking. They were using a lot of key words that he's come to associate with drug cartels: shipments, package drop-off times, and payment points. He'd managed to slip into a suit in record time. The chilly air of the New York in late October was a great motivator. He was fumbling around in his backpack for the mask. Where was it? He really needed to be better about organization, honestly. When a black sedan with heavily tinted windows pulled up in front of the warehouse, and two more men came out of it, both looking armed and dangerous. Bob and Larry, Peter dubbed them. It was much easier to keep track of bad guys in a fight when you named them. Plus, he got bored easily. Anyway, Larry pulled open one of the rear doors of the sedan open. He pulled out a young boy, blindfolded and gagged, with his hands tied behind his back. Peter felt a rush of fury. The kid didn't even look old enough to be in middle school yet. So, not drugs yet. Human trafficking, maybe? Peter's shiver had nothing to do with the chilly autumn air as this time around. He renewed his search for his mask, but still came up empty. That's when it dawned on him. It was Monday. Ned had stayed the weekend with him. Ned, who liked to throw on the mask and talk to Karen. Ned, who never put anything back in its proper place when he was done with it. Damn it, Ned. Okay, so he had some well-armed bad guys, at least one hostage, and no mask. No mask meant no suit. No suit meant no powers. He also wouldn't have access to Karen without the mask either, and he really doubted his ability to sneak in and sneak out without her. Even if he could pull it off, the kid would see his face, and he wasn't even sure if he was the only one the goons had taken. Peter strained his senses again, listening in while changing back into civilian clothes. He picked up a few more tidbits. Barry, one of the original men who he'd followed here, was on the phone with someone who he assumed to be their boss. Apparently, the kid was the son of some liaison that worked in the Wakandan embassy. Peter screeched it internally. The good points were that there was, in fact, only one hostage, and these goons were unlikely to shoot him anytime soon. They needed to keep their leverage, after all. The downside is that this was likely just a small part of a larger scheme, and Peter really did not have the patience for this on a Monday. He and Ned were going to be having a long conversation tomorrow. Peter took in a deep breath, pressing his right thumb against his left wrist to keep the nausea at bay. His anxiety attacks were so much easier to deal with when he was wearing the suits. He'd even added prongs to his web shooters that could push pressure points for him. Okay, he could do this. Get in, get the kid, get out. Easy peasy. It was in fact not easy peasy. It was a pain in the ass, especially without using his webs. He was never mocking Hawkeye again. Stealth missions were no joke. If Peter couldn't stick to the walls or didn't have a super strength, he actually would have cried a few times. Using the air vents helped a little. There was way more hidden guys than Peter had seen go in, and Peter was tempted to ask where their spawn point was. He managed to slip past them and go in and get the kid, whose name was Dazzy. That was the easy part. Peter explained to Dazzy that he was going to get them out, and that Dazzy had to keep the blindfold on and stay quiet no matter what. He, who was used to taking orders from his father's bodyguards, was compliant for the most part. The real struggle was that the poor kid had the worst case of motion sickness Peter had ever seen. Being blindfolded, sticking to ceilings, and having motion sickness was a terrible combination of things. They had to stop what felt like every 2 seconds so that the kid breathed and settled his stomach. Finding spots where they could rest that was staying out of sight was the biggest challenge of the whole operation. Peter was just glad the kid hadn't asked for a potty break yet. Getting Dazzy had only taken Peter about 30 minutes. It had been 45 and they were standing close to the rear exit of the warehouse. When they reached it, Peter slipped outside with Dazzy, speaking quietly. Alright, we're outside. No one's here, kiddo. I'm going to take the blindfold off of you for a second. When I do, I need to run as fast as you can down the street. There's a library not too far from here, about 2 blocks away. Keep going straight and you'll see it. When you get there, ask someone at the front desk to let you call your dad to come get you, okay? Dazzy nodded shakily. Peter had made him recite his father's phone number to him earlier, both to make sure he knew the information and to calm him down. What about you? Dazzy asked. His voice shook. Peter's heart swelled a little bit at the boy's concern. Don't worry about me, Dazzy. I'm just gonna stay behind a few minutes until you get far away. I'll make sure none of these guys come after you. Dazzy nodded hesitantly, and Peter slipped the blindfold off him. He climbed up to the side of the warehouse and watched as the kid ran, so he would have a better vantage point to keep an eye on the boy. He perched himself on the edge of the roof, absorbed in calculating how long it would take for Dazzy to run that far and how far away his book bag was, when his spider senses started blaring. It was a bit too late. Too late, and Peter blurted out the only thing he could think of to keep the man on the other end of the barrel from pulling the trigger. Wait, you can't shoot me. I'm Tony Stark's son. It wasn't exactly rare for Tony to get a call from Peter in evenings. Usually the kid called happy to give his report, but if he came across something more serious, like alien weapons, he'd sometimes call Tony directly, so he didn't really think anything of it when he answered Peter's call at 6 o'clock on a Monday. Hey kid, what's up? Hey dad. And yeah, Tony raised an eyebrow at that. That was new, but honestly not unwelcome. I, ran into a bit of trouble, and, can you send a driver to pick me up and, a suitcase of cash? Underoos, are you high? Did you get involved in some underground fighting or something? Peter hated asking her things, and Tony didn't think he would ask her things even if he were held at gunpoint. No, Dad, nothing's wrong. I just, lost a bet. Yeah, I told him I was paying them cash in a suitcase, and I'll need someone to drive me home. Okay, that was Peter for everything's wrong, please send help. Some emphasis on the word suitcase, and really why Peter thought he was being subtle, Tony would never know. He needed to suit up and go save his ass. Maybe his thoughts were being held at gunpoint were a little too on the nose. Yeah, I got it, kiddo, Tony sighed. What address am I picking you up from? He questioned, even as he pulled up the tracking on both Peter's phone and the Spider-Man suit. Peter rattled off some address, which is also plugged into the map. Unsurprisingly, the address was all the way across town from when Peter was calling him from. Nevertheless, Tony would have a car sent that way, just to make it seem as if he was following directions. Okay, kid, I'll be there in half an hour. Are we going to want dinner? That fireplace is only about 5 minutes away from the penthouse. That sounds great, Mr. Stark. I mean, Dad. Peter's voice sounded relieved. I'm ordering now, son. Yeah, Tony was never going to let him live that down. Mr. Stark, I'm so sorry. Oh, I'm Mr. Stark now. And here I thought it was Dad. Really, Pete, we're making so much progress. You know, Peter started giving Tony pointed looks over the rim of her glass. You're gonna give him an awful lot of crap for this. Pep, he left the mask at home, Tony pointed out. He deserves every bit of it. Pepper raised an eyebrow at him and smirked. I think you're gonna bully him into continuing to call you Dad. Peter spluttered, and Pepper laughed.